When most of us think of female superheroes, the Marvel Cinematic Universe likely comes to mind, and without the Avengers, the MCU wouldn't be the same as it is today. But before Joss Whedon was inappropriately costuming female superheroes on the set of Marvel movies, he created Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The TV show is considered a triumph of feminist media, but that doesn't mean it comes without its problems. I am specifically going to focus on the within-universe issues created by some of the male characters, but the problems are no means limited to just that. Buffy is a show that puts a woman at the forefront. We follow the character of Buffy Summers as she navigates her life in high school and beyond, while also being the Slayer. The Slayer is the chosen one with mystical powers that allow her to fight various demons over the seasons. After leaving LA, the show begins with Buffy moving to Sunnydale and having to adjust to a new school, new friends, and new monsters to fight. And yet, Buffy is still subjected to the patriarchy in the form of the institutions that she is subsumed in. Perhaps the best representations of these forces come in the form of 3 specific episodes: Helpless, Checkpoint, and Get It Done. So let's break down the forces at play that subject Buffy to the same misogyny that affects those of us without powers. Season 3, Episode 12 is entitled Helpless. In it, we find Buffy getting ready to celebrate her 18th birthday. Buffy has a history of bad birthdays, so it's not something that she's looking forward to. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the show, it's important for you to be aware of a couple of characters before we dive into the rest of this episode. Buffy is our main character. She became the Slayer at the age of 16. Because Slayers are so young when they come into their powers, they are assigned a Watcher. The Watcher is managed by the Watchers Council, who assigns the particular Watcher to the Slayer. Buffy's Watcher is Giles, who poses as the school librarian so that they can easily talk to one another. Giles quickly becomes a father figure in Buffy's life, and she trusts him implicitly. This episode, then, is when we see where Giles' loyalties truly lie. Throughout the course of the episode, Buffy realizes that she is losing her powers. Giles seems largely unconcerned, though he does promise to help Buffy figure it out. There's a tendency to shy away from Buffy herself experiencing outright sexism throughout the course of the series, unless she is somehow outside of the Slayer role. So in this episode, when we see a depowered Buffy, she experiences sexual harassment and is thrown to the ground by a classmate. As an article from the Film School Rejects says, without the beacon of light that comes from an ass-kicking, empowered superhero, Sunnydale is a pretty dark place. Buffy is still unsure as to why she is losing her powers, but the audience quickly learns that it is Giles who is taking her powers away from her at the request of the Watchers Council. It turns out that this is a Slayer rite of passage. When the Slayer turns 18, she is forced to face a vampire with no supernatural abilities. This, then, is where we fully realize the Watchers Council is meant to stand for patriarchy. Buffy's powers have insulated her from experiences of traditional sexism that some of her friends may face, but she is ultimately still beholden to the patriarchy. And this version of the patriarchy sees itself as upstanding and necessary. The Watchers dress impeccably, and they speak in upper-class British accents, and even the people closest to Buffy are not immune to them. Giles chooses the power given to him by the symbolic patriarchy over his love for Buffy, at least initially. And so, a depowered Buffy finds herself up against a serial killer turned vampire who is obsessed with killing women as the vampire she is meant to face in this so-called rite of passage. Once again, the institutional patriarchy of the Watchers Council enables the actions of outright misogynists. Giles experiences a change of heart when he finds this vampire's most recent victim, who, funnily enough, just so happens to be a man. Giles explains the test to Buffy, which is supposed to invalidate it. However, the council isn't just going to let their ritual go to waste. They throw Buffy in with the vampire anyway. Buffy does succeed in killing the vampire, but this experience forever changes her. This is Buffy's first real experience with the power of patriarchy, and the threat that they still pose to her even though she has superpowers. Giles, meanwhile, is fired from the council for his intervention in the test, leading to his separation from the symbolic patriarchy. The council views the Slayer as a means to an end, and now Giles is firmly separated from them. Giles cares too much about Buffy as a person, not just as the Slayer. But why doesn't the council care about Buffy beyond her ability? An analysis of this episode by the YouTube channel The Passion of the Nerd might give us some idea.
Those of you who aren't stateside might not know that the 18th birthday in the US is an incredibly significant one. You can vote, you can get a tattoo. Your 18th birthday signifies your independence. And what a terrifying prospect that must be for the Watchers Council, who consider the Slayer power to be their instrument. The reality of this rite of passage is it's intended to allow the council to maintain strict control over the Slayer power by keeping the bearer of it young. They don't care about the individual.
One Slayer dies, next one's called.
strip the Slayer of all her power without warning and throw her in a cage with a wolf, under the guise of it being a rite of passage. What does it matter to the Council? This isn't a test, it's a system of control.
The Council is enduring, while there can always be a new Slayer. They need to be able to control this girl, and what better way to do that than to never let her get old? Control remains an important part of the Watchers Council throughout the course of the show. At the end of Season 3, Buffy decides that she will no longer work with the Watchers Council, and it seemed like that would be the end of them. That is, until Season 5 when Buffy and company are desperate for information on that season's big bad, and it's information that only the Watchers Council can give them. Giles goes to them to ask for information, but they refuse to give it unless they can evaluate Buffy first. By this time, Giles is firmly separated from the patriarchal systems of the universe. He now owns a magic shop. In this world, magic is a direct symbol for the feminine, showing that Giles is firmly against patriarchy. The moment the council arrives, they shut down the magic shop in an effort to show their power. They then force Buffy to comply with their test by threatening to deport Giles if she does not. In this way, the audience is once again given the idea of the kind of power that the council is able to wield. Their endless connections and ability to pull the strings of the greater world stage is what makes them a threat. They are firm believers in tradition and ritual, which we've known since Season 3, so it's not surprising that their tests for Buffy involve her completing nearly impossible tasks that are rooted in ancient traditions. Not being able to meet these challenges forces Buffy to question her own abilities instead of the inane traditions of the Council. This episode is about power struggles, and if that wasn't already blatantly obvious, Buffy outright states it to the Council at the end of the episode.
There isn't going to be a review.
Sorry?
No review. No interrogation. No questions you know I can't answer. No hoops. No jumps. No interruptions. See, I've had a lot of people talking at me the last few days. Everyone just lining up to tell me how unimportant I am. And I finally figured out why. Power. I have it. They don't. This bothers them.
Buffy finally realizes that the Council needs her, not the other way around. Without her, they have no purpose, so it's really her that has the power in this situation, and she is able to use that to her advantage to get the information that she desperately needed. Once again, the Council gets to fade into the background after Buffy has firmly established that she is the one with the power, not them. We don't hear much from the Watchers throughout the rest of the series, but this Season 7 episode explores the origins of the Slayer power. Buffy, once again looking for a way to take down this season's big bad, explores the past of the Slayer in the hopes that it will give her a way to defeat her foe. While looking into this, she is sucked into a portal that transports her back in time to see the men who created the first Slayer. These men explain that they can give Buffy more power, which will help her to win her battle, but there's a cost to this, a cost that the original Slayer was forced to pay. In the time of the first Slayer, demons ran rampant in the world, so these men looked for a way to even the odds. In order to do this, they found a girl, chained her to the earth, and forced the essence of a demon inside of her. As Kevin Durand says in Are You Ready to Finish This? The Battle Against Patriarchal Forces of Darkness, the sexual connotations are clear. The Shadow Men physically and metaphysically raped the primitive to create the first Slayer. This power was forced onto the first Slayer in a way that violated her. From this point on, she is seen as something less than human by these original Watchers. And so the power of the Slayer itself originally comes from patriarchy. That's why the power is hoarded into one person instead of several. That's why the Slayers are always young girls who can be easily manipulated. That's why tradition is used to keep these girls subservient. And yet, Buffy rejects that additional power, refusing to conform to the patriarchal standards that the Slayer mantle was built on. Instead, she sees the value of shared power, and in the series finale, sharing the power is exactly what she does.
From now on, every girl in the world who might be a Slayer will be a Slayer. Every girl who could have the power will have the power. Can stand up, will stand up. Slayers. Every one of us. Make your choice. Are you ready to be strong?